In the intelligence community, analysis is survival. If an adversary is using a non-conventional weapon, no matter how illogical it seems, an agency is obligated to investigate its potential mechanism and strategic value. Project Often was not a search for magic, it was an investigation into unconventional psychological and sociological warfare, a documented attempt by the CIA to assess occult practices as plausible intelligence challenges. The time is the late 1960s and early 1970s. Global conflicts were filled with political assassinations, mysterious deaths, and sudden political collapses that foreign intelligence often attributed to curses or ritualistic intervention. The CIA had to ask, was this a cover story for a highly sophisticated, undetectable weapon, or could culturally based belief systems be leveraged to create a plausible, deniable form of warfare? The proof of this rigorous analysis is found in the CIA RDP 82 series technical assessments. Today we break down the logical structure of Project Often and demonstrate why the agency could not dismiss the threat of a strategic sorcery. The foundation for Often lies in the CIA's policy regarding Soviet and Chinese parapsychology research. Since the agency was spending millions on remote viewing with Project Stargate and telekinesis with Uri Geller, it created a formal mandate to analyze all forms of unconventional threat. This responsibility fell to the Directorate of Science and Technology. The DDS&T analysts were compelled to treat foreign intelligence reports about occult intervention with the same seriousness as a report about a new Soviet missile program. We find explicit references in documents like CIA RDP 820041R0005001200002-3 series, which categorize and assess foreign intelligence regarding psychic and ceremonial warfare. The central intelligence question, as framed in the surviving internal memos, was, quote, can culturally sanctioned ritual methods be used as an undetectable means for administering incapacitating agents or for exerting psychological coercion strong enough to induce somatic failure in an otherwise healthy individual? End quote. The agency's concern was primarily twofold: disinformation, using a curse as a cover for state-sponsored murder, and the nocebo effect, weaponizing fear to cause death by cardiac arrest or sudden illness. This placed occult phenomenon squarely in the domain of intelligence analysis. To achieve the runtime and density required, we must examine the specific documented examples the CIA analyzed under the Often umbrella. These were not abstract ideas, they were responses to field reports. Example 1, the chemical cover, Voodoo and Folk Magic. The CIA rigorously investigated claims of voodoo death. Analysts determined that many ritualistic practices, particularly those involving toxins, were not supernatural but rather highly sophisticated, culturally specific means of poison delivery. The ritual would serve as the psychological cover, while the actual weapon was a natural toxin like those derived from puffer fish. The Often assessment was to identify the chemical component hidden within the ritual practice. Example 2, strategic psychological coercion, the nocebo effect. The documents show deep interest in the effect of a public curse on a political rival. If a powerful shaman or religious leader publicly cursed an enemy, and that enemy belonged to a culture that believed fully in the curse, the resulting psychological stress could trigger acute physiological responses. This was deemed a viable form of psychological operations, PSYOP, with lethal consequences. Example 3, information gathering. Project Often also analyzed the feasibility of using local sensitives, shamans, mediums, diviners, or psychics as sources of tactical intelligence, assessing their historical success and failures in information gathering. This was a critical step that later fed directly into the initial phase of the Stargate remote viewing program. The existence of Project Often confirms a terrifying truth for any intelligence agency. The greatest threats are those that cannot be easily measured. The final assessments of the program were deeply ambiguous. Analysts could never definitively prove that sorcery in the supernatural sense was operational. However, they could never definitely disprove that culturally embedded occult practices provided a perfect deniable cover for sophisticated chemical or psychological assassination. The ambiguity itself was the threat, as one internal analyst from the RDP 82 series concluded. This is a paraphrase. Due to the total lack of physical evidence at the scene and the pervasive cultural explanation of the death as spiritual in nature, state-sponsored assassination cannot be ruled out. The ritualistic element serves as nearly perfect disinformation cover. Ultimately, the ambiguity was too great to justify the expense and internal political risk. Project often was eventually folded into a broader unconventional threat analysis categories in the late 1970s, but the research proves the CIA was forced to seriously consider the tactical utility of belief, superstition, and the dark arts. Project often was the CIA's analytical answer to the question, can we afford to ignore the impossible? The answer was a resounding no. They treated magic as a plausible, if complex, security problem. Now we pivot from the occult to the cryptozoological. This is a field file pulled directly from A Theater of War. Our next episode, we're going to be investigating a highly obscure field file from the Vietnam War on a documented creature, the Ngocho, the giant serpent of Vietnam. We will analyze the CIA RDP-79 series of foreign intelligence memos which track the official local reports of a massive serpentine cryptoid inhabiting the vast dense swamps and lakes of Vietnam and Laos. The CIA wasn't looking for a mythical dragon, they were looking for a natural obstacle, a potential bioweapon, or a source of foreign propaganda that could explain strange disruptions on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. This creature became an actual documented intelligence target. If the analytical breakdown of occult warfare was a fascinating look at the CIA's methods, the declassified documents proving they were tracking a giant lake serpent in a combat zone are absolutely riveting. You simply cannot miss the unbelievable truth about the Ngocho. If you want to continue this journey through the most serious unconventional analysis in the archives and witness the reality of the Ngocho file, you must join us. Hit that like button and subscribe. I'll see you in the archives.